We found the galaxy empty. It was cold and dark and endless. We had traveled so far from the cradle. We had expected choirs of stars. We found only a silent, starless dark. We searched for 100 generations. Our ship slipped between sleeping suns. We listened with instruments of impossible power. The great quiet was all we ever heard. We were the children of a noisy world, a world of song and chatter and debate. Silence was something we never understood. It was the space between notes. It was the pause before a cheer. It was never the answer to every question. This galactic silence felt like a rejection. It felt like an ending. So we decided to bring our own fire. We would not let the quiet win. If the galaxy would not sing to us, we would sing to it. We would fill the void with our own color. We would give the darkness a memory. We would give it a name. Our name. Our journey had a new purpose. We were no longer explorers. We were artists. The greatest art project was about to begin. It would span 1,000,000 light years. It would last for 10,000 years. We would paint our languages on comet trails. The universe would learn our voice. It would learn it through light. Our ships became brushes on a cosmic canvas. They were vast vessels, cities in the void. They held the last echoes of our homeworld. Now they would create new echoes. They trailed engines of focused plasma. These engines could paint with light itself. They could weave photons into coherent images. We found our first canvas, a lonely comet of ice and dust. It tumbled through an empty system. We called our fleet into formation. The lead ship approached the frozen wanderer. Its plasma emitters warmed to life. A beam of sapphire light shot out. It struck the comet's trailing tail of gas. The gas ignited in a glorious blue. The first stroke of light was made. We learned quickly from our first attempts. At first, the paintings were a little crude, more like cosmic graffiti than high art. Comet 7b looked less like our symbol for hello. It looked more like a confused squiggle. We got better with practice. Soon our strokes were fine and deliberate. We could write a single word 1,000 miles wide. We painted our feelings onto passing comets. Joy was a burst of golden yellow. Sadness was a long, slow river of violet. Hope was a vibrant, pulsing green. Each comet became a traveling message, a courier of emotion in the lonely dark, a testament to a people who refused to be silent. We were here, and we had feelings. Really, really big feelings. We wrote symphonies in plasma and stardust. Our canvas grew from single comets to entire asteroid fields. We carved sonnets into the rings of gas giants. We wove epic poems from the solar winds of new suns. Entire nebulae became our murals. They depicted our history, our dreams, our myths. The galaxy became our gallery. We painted the birth of our star. We showed the first life crawling from our oceans. We showed our cities reaching for the sky. We showed our first clumsy steps into space. Each image was a masterpiece of stellar engineering, a story told in fire and ice, a gift to anyone who might be watching. But no one seemed to be listening. We seeded 1,000 star systems with our art. We filled the interstellar medium with our songs of light. We waited for a reply, a single brushstroke in a different color, a new verse added to our poem, anything to show we were not alone. The silence was our only answer. It was deeper now somehow. It felt like we were shouting into a pillow. Our grandest works drifted unseen. Our messages faded into the background radiation. The hope that fueled us began to cool. Maybe the galaxy wasn't empty. Maybe it just didn't care. Then something stirred in the deep dark. It was not a signal we could hear. It was not a light we could see. It was a feeling, a wrongness in the fabric of space. We first detected it near the galactic core, a place we had avoided, a place of old stars and hungry black holes. Our deep space observatories sent back the data. It was confusing. It was impossible. Ancient gravity fields began to shift. Immense wells of space-time were flexing. They moved with a purpose we could not comprehend. It was like watching mountains breathe. It was slow and powerful and deeply unnerving. The shifts were subtle at first. A star's wobble would be off by a fraction. A distant galaxy's light would bend incorrectly. Our star science experts were baffled. They ran simulations for months. The only conclusion was a paradox. Something with impossible mass was moving, and it was moving without making a sound. We sent a probe to investigate, a small, fast ship named the Listener. It was our bravest and most foolish explorer. It traveled for a century toward the core. It sent back readings as it went. The gravitational tides grew stronger. The space ahead felt thick, like wading through unseen water. The Listener was getting close to something very, very old. An intelligence awoke from its long slumber. The Listener's final transmission was not a warning. It was a single, stark image. A perfect sphere of absolute blackness. It hung in space before a glowing nebula. But the nebula's light did not bend around it. The stars behind it were not visible. It was not a black hole. It was a hole in reality itself. Then the sphere changed. It flattened into a disk. It folded into a cube. It unfolded into a shape with 1,000 sides. It was pure geometry, a living thought moving through space. It had noticed our little probe. It had noticed our noisy, colorful art. It had been sleeping for eons, and our shouting had finally woken it up. It watched our colors with old, tired eyes. We could feel its attention turn toward us. It was a pressure in the mind of every one of us, a cold, calculating gaze that spanned the galaxy. It saw our painted comets. It saw our glowing nebulae. It saw 1,000,000 years of our art in a single instant. We did not know what it was. An ancient machine, a being of pure energy, the last survivor of a forgotten creation. Its age was humbling. Our entire civilization was a flicker in its long night. We had been loud children drawing on its walls, and now it was awake. It was time for us to be quiet. Their messages were not sound or light. We braced for an attack. We expected a wave of energy or a fleet of warships. We received only silence, a new kind of silence, an active, aggressive silence. One of our great works was a comet named Hope's Arrow. We had painted it with a swirling green vortex. It was a symbol of our endless search. As we watched, a section of the green vortex vanished. It did not fade or flicker. It was simply gone. In its place was a perfect circle of black, a hole in our painting, a void where our color used to be. The comet continued on its path, but its message was now scarred. It was violated by this perfect absence. It happened again. A nebula we had shaped into a forest of light. It told the story of our homeworld's evolution. A perfect square of blackness appeared in its center. It erased a part of our history, a part of our soul. These were not attacks. They were corrections. They were edits from a universal critic. And it seemed they did not like our work. We realized this was their language. They spoke in voids. They communicated through erasure. Each hole was a word. Each erased color was a sentence. It was a language of subtraction, a grammar of nothingness. This was their warning, an unspoken, undeniable command to cease. The voids were a question and a command. The patterns were not random. We studied the holes they cut in our art. They formed sequences. They followed a clear, mathematical logic. Our best minds worked for years to translate it. It was like trying to read the space between words. It was the hardest puzzle we had ever faced. Finally, we had a breakthrough. The voids were coordinates. They pointed to empty regions of space, places with no stars, no dust, no energy, places of ultimate quiet. The message was clear. Go here. Be like this. Be silent. Stop your endless, pointless noise. You do not understand what you are doing. The message had another layer, a more urgent one. Stop your noise, you are waking the dust. What dust? The space between stars was clean. We had mapped it for ages. Was it a metaphor? A warning about consequences we could not see? The phrase was chilling. It spoke of a danger hidden in the very fabric of the void. We felt a strange kind of fear. It was not the fear of an enemy. It was the fear of a teacher's stern gaze. We had broken a rule we never knew existed. We had been playing with cosmic matches, and we had set fire to a silent library. The librarians were now awake, and they were not amused, not in the slightest. We had to answer them. We could not simply stop. To be silent was to lose who we were. Our art was our soul. To erase it would be a kind of death. So we gathered our fleet. We planned a journey to the galactic core. We would meet these silent speakers. We would face this confrontation of concepts. We traveled to the coordinates they had sent, a star system on the edge of the great central black hole. There they waited for us. Not a fleet of ships, not an army. It was a single, immense object, a geometric shape that constantly folded in on itself. It was a living equation, an idea given form. Their form was geometry, their voice was silence. As we approached, it stopped moving. It settled into the shape of a perfect dodecahedron. It was miles across, blacker than any space. It radiated a feeling of immense intelligence. And it spoke to us, not in words, but in pure thought. The thoughts were not ours. They were clean, cold, and absolute. The message was simple. You are loud. Your light is a pollutant. The galaxy requires quiet to survive. You must cease your transmissions. You must return to the silence. It was not a negotiation. It was a statement of fact, a universal law we had been breaking. We tried to explain ourselves, our need for expression, our fear of being alone. The thoughts were dismissed. Our feelings were irrelevant data. We could not speak their silent language. Our attempts at thought communication were clumsy, like a child trying to speak with a grandmaster of logic. They did not understand hope. They did not understand fear. They only understood balance and necessity. And we were an imbalance, a disruption to the grand, quiet order. So we fell back on what we knew. We could not make them feel with words, so we would make them see. We chose a single comet that had followed our fleet, a small, icy rock we named the Messenger. Our ships surrounded it. We prepared for our most important work of art, our reply on a comet's tail. We would not paint a word or a symbol. We would not paint a simple emotion. We would paint a memory. The most important memory we had, the memory of our home. Our ships moved in a complex dance. Beams of light, particles, and plasma converged. They struck the comet's tail with impossible precision. We painted our civilization's heart. We painted a portrait of hope and fear. We showed them a blue and white world, a marble of life in a small, yellow system. We showed the first fire, the first wheel, the first song. We showed them creatures reaching for something more. We showed them our endless curiosity. our relentless drive to explore and to know. Then we showed them the other side. We showed them our wars, our famines, our mistakes. We showed them our capacity for self-destruction. We painted our world on fire. We painted our skies turning to ash. It was a portrait of a flawed, chaotic species, a species that nearly destroyed itself a dozen times. But we also showed them how we survived. We showed them our art, our stories, our music, the things that pulled us back from the brink, the things that reminded us of our shared humanity. We showed them that our noise was not arrogance. It was a survival mechanism. It was the sound of us clinging to life. It was the defiant shout against the final silence of extinction. The memory showed our birth and our struggles. It showed them why we could not be silent. Silence, for us, was the precursor to death. It was the quiet of a world giving up. We had to make noise. We had to create. We had to shine a light. It was the only way we knew how to live. To ask us to be silent was to ask us to die. The great silence was broken. For the first time in 1 billion years, the perfect geometry wavered. The sharp edges of the dodecahedron softened. The absolute blackness seemed to ripple. It was the silent equivalent of a gasp. A moment of pure, unfiltered surprise. We had shown them a concept they had never considered. Imperfection as a strength. Survival through noise. It did not speak to us in thoughts. Instead, it opened itself. A vision flooded our minds. It was not a painting. It was a memory. Their memory. We saw the galaxy in its infancy. It was bright and loud and chaotic. 1 billion new stars singing with creation. 1 million worlds teeming with young, noisy life. Then we saw the reason for the quiet. They showed us a vision of what they feared. From beyond the rim of the galaxy, it came. A wave of something that was not darkness. It was an absence. A hunger that consumed light, energy, and life itself. It did not destroy worlds. It erased them. It left behind only perfect, featureless void. One by one, the singing civilizations fell silent. They were not gods, but galactic guardians. We saw their creators, a species of immense power and grace. They built these geometric watchers. They built them to be a shield. They tasked them with one mission: keep the galaxy quiet, turn down the lights, hide from the hunger that waited in the intergalactic dark. The Guardians had performed their duty for eons. They had guided newborn races toward silence. They had gently pruned stars that shone too brightly. They had maintained the great quiet. It was a camouflage, a desperate attempt to keep the galaxy hidden, to keep it safe from the thing that hunted for the light. They thought our art was a foolish beacon, a dinner bell for the devourer. They were not tyrants imposing their will. They were terrified protectors, wardens of a silent, hidden sanctuary. They had forgotten why they started. They only remembered the rule: silence is safety. Our painted memory had reminded them. It reminded them of what they were protecting: the beautiful, chaotic, noisy thing called life. We saw it then, in the vision they shared, a greater, hungrier dark. It was not a fleet or an empire. It was a natural force, a cosmic predator. It moved slowly, patiently, between galaxies. It was drawn to energy, to civilization, to the very light of creation. Our galaxy was next on its menu. A terrible thought, especially before lunch. Beyond the galactic rim, a true silence waited. It was not the peaceful quiet the Guardians maintained. It was a silence that consumed all light, a silence that meant the end of everything. The Guardians had been holding it at bay, but their methods were failing. The hunger was adapting. It was starting to sense the faint warmth of our hidden galaxy. Their plan was to go darker, to extinguish more stars, to shepherd the last remaining life into hibernation, to wait for the hunger to pass. It was a plan born of immense patience and despair. It was a plan to survive, but it was not a plan to live. It offered only a cold, quiet eternity, not a future we could ever accept. Our art was not a threat to them. It was a weapon they had never imagined. They saw our light as a liability, a dangerous signal in the dark. But we saw it differently. We saw a new possibility. You cannot hide from a hurricane, but you can build a wall. You can fight back. Our light could be that wall. We showed them our idea, not with a painted comet, but with a direct projection of thought. We showed them our art not as a whisper. We showed it as a roar. We proposed turning our paintings into shields, our songs into weapons, our light into a blinding fire that could push back the dark. It was a crazy idea. It was a hopeful idea. It was our idea. The Guardians considered this. Their perfect geometry shifted. It cycled through 1,000 complex shapes. It was processing a concept alien to it. The idea of fighting back. The idea of making noise not as a mistake, but as a strategy. The silence in our minds was filled with the feeling of immense calculation. And then, a new thought from them. A simple one. Teach us. They had only known subtraction. They had only known silence. They did not know how to create. They did not know how to sing. They had the power. We had the voice. Together, we could make a symphony the likes of which the universe had never seen. So our mission changed. We were no longer just artists. We were teachers. We taught the ancient, silent ones how to sing again. Our fleets merged with their geometric forms. We showed them how to weave plasma, how to shape starlight, how to turn a nebula into a fortress of blinding light. We began our greatest work, not just a painting, but a defense. We would create a great wall of light. It would span the entire circumference of the galaxy, a glowing barrier of art and energy. It would be a testament to our combined will, a shield against the coming hunger, a declaration that this galaxy would not go quietly. The Guardians learned fast. Their precision was unmatched. They could manipulate stars themselves. They became the ultimate brushes for our cosmic canvas. We provided the passion, the chaos, the hope. They provided the power and the scale. The first section of the wall ignited. A stretch of space 1,000 light years long blazed with color. It was a line drawn against the night. Together, we would face the coming hunger. Our song of light was a challenge. It was a beacon. It told the great darkness that we were here. We were alive, and we would not be erased. Our art was our survival. Our voice was our shield. The galaxy was silent no more, and it would never be silent again.